Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
The flop house I was dropped off at wasn't half bad, but I knew I could do better. I wandered around looking through trash cans until I could find an old right work boot that somebody had thrown out. It fit. Okay, it was a little big, and they didn't match, but it was definitely better than having two left shoes. I wandered the east side looking for a better place to bunk. I knew there were the municipal lodging house and the Salvation Army shelter, as well as others. My mismatched shoes took me down Doyer Street. It was about 4 p.m. and the line for the shelter that had been set up in the old Chinese theater had started to form. I got in line. Talking to the others in line, I found that the spread was Jake, and even if you didn't get a mattress, at least you could sleep on the floor out of the rain. I was warned about the municipal lodging house by the G. The last time he had stayed there, he didn't get a bunk until 1 in the morning. Then they woke him up around 4 a.m. to do 3 hours work. I would rather stay here. We were let in after about an hour or two. The line shuffled forward until we filled a large room. Then came a religious service. I don't remember how long it was or what denomination it espoused. After the service, we filed past a poor box. I dropped my nickel and a couple of pennies in and down a set of stairs. There was a huge basement area where we shuffled up to a counter and got our food. The minister and volunteers then led us in singing hymns. Once we had finished eating and singing, the mattresses that were stacked against one wall were spread out to cover the floor. There were about 300 of them. We each lay down on a mattress. I found out later that some of the joints on the street would give you a free shot of hooch, but if you left and somebody else got your mattress, you would be sleeping on the floor. The next day started early. It was still dark out. We piled up the mattresses and got a bowl of oatmeal, plain with no honey. It would be all we got to chew that day, unless we were lucky enough to get a job that went all day and gave you some grub. The plugs all walked out to begin another day. I was moving slow, so all the jobs were gone and the rest of the plugs had gone off to do what they did. I was standing outside alone when the Reverend came up to me. He said, "If you want to work and will do a good job, you can repay the mission for dinner last night and breakfast this morning." I nodded yes, and he led me down to an overgrown, unkempt churchyard. He told me, "Here you go, make it look nice." I found some rusty tools in a shed out back and went to work. He looked in on me throughout the morning and must have been happy with my work because he brought me a hunk of cheese and a couple of potatoes for lunch. That afternoon, I finished up the yard and even found a leftover can of paint and touched up the outside of the church building. I cleaned the brush, put all the tools away, and went to get in line for the mission. The minister shook my hand and thanked me for my good works. Living in the shelter, eating food that was bland yet filling, that described my days while in the shelter. Filling days, but what filled them was basically emptiness. For example, standing in a line at shelters, the more time I spent in line, the more chance I was guaranteed a hot and a cot. Another good example was work. The longer I waited for a job, usually hard or repetitive labor, the more chance I had of getting a job. If I did get a job, for as long as a day, I only earned some tin. Maybe enough to pay for a flop, but if I decided to instead take the charity of missions, then I felt the guilt. The way I lived ensured that I felt guilty. Men hung themselves because they could not take care of their families. While I had a job, no family, and I was basically just hiding. The next few weeks, or was it a month? I lost track of time. I was living the life of the homeless and jobless. The days I didn't find work, I walked the streets of New York looking for Miles or his flivver. The weather was getting warmer out, and I was getting antsy. I walked every stinking street in the Apple and didn't find Miles. While I was hiding, I did manage to hear some interesting new items. Non-intervention committees patrol of Spanish land and sea frontiers to prevent entrance of volunteers and munitions went into operation. Britain and France released Belgium from her Locarno obligations, but continued to consider themselves bound to preserve her territorial integrity. My bangtail came in one day. I joined up with a crew that was trucked over to Jersey for the day, cleaning up brush. The truck drove over the GWB, both coming and going. On the way back, I fingered in black Airstream parked in front of his house all by itself. There were not too many Airstreams around, so I thought that there was a good chance that Miles had thought that since I had been rubbed out, he had went back to the Airstream. I went back the next day, and I saw the tin can again. This time I saw one of Miles' goons near the car. Murder. I had found the pill. Now it was time for Simon Maddox to come back from the dead. The Justice Department building in New York City looked daunting, but I was ready to get my life back. I got some strange looks as I walked the halls of justice looking for the FBI office. My shoes might not match and my clothes might be old, dirty and worn, but I held my head up high as I walked. I may have looked like a bum, but I was a proud bum. I finally found the FBI office on the second floor in the back. The secretary, a dame with a doggy look about her, was startled when she saw me. "MMA, may I help you?" I whispered to her as I leaned close. "I'm working in disguise for the FBI. I'm here to see Agent Joe College." She started to tell me that there was no agent by that name working there, but I interrupted her with a loud, "Sho." It's his code name. He is a younger man with brown hair and spectacles. I sat down in the chair in front of her desk. "I'll just wait right here." She got up and hurried further into the FBI offices. About as fast as she left, she came back with Agent Joe College following her. "There," she said, pointing at me. He just came in and sat down. The poor doll looked like she was going to break down in tears. The agent just grabbed me by the arm and dragged me where he had come from. He pulled me into another office. He looked like he was about to blow a gasket. He was pointing his finger at me saying, "What are you doing here? You were supposed to be hiding out in that flop house in the Bowery. I cannot guarantee your safety if you won't stay hidden." I sat in the chair facing his desk. "You haven't found Miles yet, have you?" He shook his head no. "I walked all over this city and I didn't find him either." "Do you know why I couldn't find him in the Apple?" He again shook his head no. "It's because he is across the river in Jersey and I know where. I want my life back. My life, my office, my clothes, my car, my landlady, everything." He started to hem and haw, but I wasn't backing down. I demanded that he get me my clothes and give me a ride to my home. "I'm going to get this Miles for you, but in my own way. Is Agent Goldman still at the house?" He nodded yes. "I don't know what you had her doing, but she is back to working with me now." He nodded his head again and got my bag of clothes out of a locker. As I changed clothes, I said, "What about my wallet, keys, and money?" He pulled them out of his desk and handed them to me. I almost felt like my old self again. All I needed was a hot bath and some delousing. After Agent Joe College Fitzgerald dropped me off at Mrs. O'Grady's house, I stood outside for a while. What would she do? I did not want to scare the old broad to death. Would it be easier if I called her first? I shook myself and knocked on the door. I had just been putting off what had to be done. Everything would be all right. The door opened to Mrs. O'Grady's back. She was speaking loudly to someone in another room. Mrs. O'Grady turned around and gasped as she saw it was me at the door. She suddenly hugged me, exclaiming, "Simon." Then she let go and went back in the house. I was left standing on the stoop, bewildered. Samantha appeared from the living room and hugged me tight. Then she wrinkled her nose and said, "You need a bath." She let me go and retreated into the house, just as Mrs. O'Grady rounded the corner with her broom. She was hitting me with the broom, hard. She kept repeating, "Ew, you reprobate." She would hit me twice with the broom, call me a reprobate, then go back to the bashing with the broom. She finally broke down in tears and ran back into the house. I waited a moment to shake off the broom attack. Then I followed her into the house. She was just sitting at the table shaking her head with Samantha holding her. She mouthed, "Go take a bath," to me, and I went upstairs. After a nice hot bath and a change of clothes, I'd burned the old ones. I headed back down the stairs a step at a time. I didn't hear any sobbing or swearing, so I thought it would be all right. Samantha was whispering in Mrs. O'Grady's ear. He had to do it, and he couldn't tell you, dear. His death had to look real, so he would be safe. I walked up and gave Mama O'Grady a hug, whispering how sorry I was. "I suppose you haven't had lunch either?" Mrs. O asked as she got up and strode into the kitchen. "Just hug your girl and have a seat at the table." She peeked out the kitchen door and with a wink said, "I'll bet you missed my cooking." Boy, was she right. I gathered Samantha into my arms and sat down with her in my lap. "I really missed your bangers and mash. What they have at the mission will barely keep a G going." Lo and behold, Mama O'Grady slid a plate of bangers and mash onto the table in front of me and said, "Your mama told me you were not dead," but I did not believe her. "I did cook a little more each night in case you did show up though. Call it my Irish stubbornness." Samantha jumped out of my lap, mumbling something about not wanting to get accidentally bitten. "I'm happy that you did not give up on me, Mama O, and your food is as tasty as I remember it." She socked me, ouch, and sat back looking smug. I asked Samantha, "What have our friends at the FBI had you doing?" "I've been watching The Office and looking for Miles during the week, but on Sundays I don my lederhosen and a peasant blouse." I gave her a bewildered look. She curtsied and asked, "Would you like a picture to remember this day?" That was one item taken care of. I would then develop 2 sets of pictures, one for them, which I gave them the next Sunday, and one for the FBI. She shuddered and said, "They looked so cute in their brown shirts and shorts while singing in German about stabbing a Jew with a knife. Real wholesome Americans. What is this world coming to, Simon?" I took her into my arms as she quietly started to weep. I held her in my arms until her tears went away, and then I told her the good news. I found out where Miles is hiding out. "I know. You and I both searched the city for him. We did not find him because he is in Jersey and I know where." "That's incredible. The entire New York office of the FBI searched for him. And you, living as a homeless man, managed to get the inside scoop on him." Samantha looked very proud of her detective, and I liked it. Never underestimate someone with mismatched shoes. It's written in the big book upstairs that Simon Maddox will bring Mr. Miles down. How else can you explain me still being alive after he tried so many times to get rid of me? Samantha and I spent the rest of the afternoon getting reacquainted and planning Mr. Miles' downfall. When Charlie and Joe showed up for dinner, they didn't look very surprised to see me. Charlie just looked disgusted as he handed a smiling Joe a sawbuck. Never bet against Sam Maddox. The next morning, Samantha and I were due to start our watch of Miles' hideout. Unfortunately, from what I remembered, the road did not go right past the house. It had a long dirt driveway that was reached by a secluded country road. There was just no way to watch from a car without being fingered. Samantha and I hopped into my tin can to get the low down on the area around Miles' joint. We couldn't get too close, but Samantha thought it was aces that there was a bunch of trees. I did not see why she was so happy, and I asked her about it. Don't you see, we can sneak through the woods and spy on him from there. Now I'm an Apple G. I know from nothing about country life. I know how to stretch a cup of coffee in an all-night hash house, but I have no clue as to which side of a tree moss grows on. We came ready to watch Miles' joint for a couple of days, so I drove the car as close to the back of the woods as I could and looked for a place to hide it. Once I covered the tin can with bushes I had pulled out of the ground. Samantha told me they would last for 2 days until they turned brown. I told her that I thought they would turn brown in the fall. She just shook her head and started walking into the woods. Samantha had us both positioned at the edge of the woods to watch Miles' house. I was very bored and thought that I was done with bugs when I had given up life as a tramp. Samantha and I were taking turns watching every 4 hours or so. I thought that I would let her sleep as much as I could. Once again, I was wrong. She always took her watch when it was time. I guess chivalry had been rubbed out. The first night and the next day we saw squat. The next night, however, we found a Chinese angle. I almost blew my wig when I saw who was visiting Mr. Miles. It was the deputy chief of coppers, an aide to his honor the mayor, and the assistant district attorney. Samantha was snapping pics of all the greaseballs being met in person by Miles. Those pics were going to torpedo more than one political career. We watched all night. Those plugs left after an hour, and no one else arrived. The Hoods did make several trips during the day, but Miles stayed in the house. I was getting very tired of this stakeout in the woods. Just past 6 p.m. the Airstream and the Hoods were back. Everybody, and I do mean everybody, poured out of the joint. There were Miles, Lena, and even that old broad that had socked me with the fry pan. Miles and the old broad looked happy, but Lena just looked lit. She was very disheveled and frumpy looking. She had obviously hitched her wagon to a wrong G when she chose Miles. The Airstream drove away and headed south. Samantha and I sneaked up to the house and broke in. We didn't want anybody to put the finger on us. We just wanted to get the lowdown on what Miles was doing, but we didn't want him to get wise to us having been there. The lock on the front door was easy to get around with the tools of the trade that I had brought with me. True, if the coppers found the tools on me, I would be invited to the clubhouse and spend some time in the hoosegow. Samantha and I went over the joint with a fine-toothed comb. The only thing we found that was important was a new lockbox tight in the middle of the floor. This wasn't a cheap safe that a can opener could handle. We needed a Peterman or somebody like that. We left the place just the way we found it and locked the front door back up. I had just made it back to the tree line when something caught my eye. It was a spark in the sky to the south. I watched it as the spark blossomed into a flame, then fell to the earth. Samantha grabbed my arm and told me to keep up. I pointed out the fire and asked her what she thought it was, but she had no idea. That looked like it was miles away, yet we still saw it. I was sure that it was big enough for something to come over the ether on it. The branches were turning brown as we cleared them off the tin can and set off for Mrs. O'Grady's house. We turned the car radio on, but didn't hear anything about a fire. Tonight was Noah's boy with Murphy carrying a wreath, and I was looking forward to dinner. If only the world could be as simple and satisfying as Mama O'Grady's cooking. The Morning Blat sure had the story on the fire yesterday evening. That fire had been in Lakehurst, New Jersey at the Naval Air Station. It read that the Hindenburg, a German dirigible, was trying to dock to a mooring mast after completing a 2-day transatlantic voyage. The airship had left Frankfurt, Germany on the 4th of May. A number of people on the Hindenburg were killed, as well as at least one person on the ground. The cause has not yet been determined, but people in the know were hinting of sabotage. A vigorous discussion among the residents of the boarding house followed. Charlie was quick to point out that a bomb had obviously been stowed aboard in Germany, with the explosion and fire supposed to have happened over the ocean to hide the evidence. The dirigible must have caught a tailwind on the way over. It was just dumb luck that it made it all the way to the United States. Samantha wasn't so sure. The only reason the Germans would have had to sabotage it would have been to blame it on us. We know that Germany is itching for a fight, but we are too far away to start anything. The chinning went on, until Charlie said he was going to be late for work. The chinning broke up soon after that, but I was certain that we hadn't heard the last of it. We now bring you an event that actually happened yesterday. Reporter Herbert Morrison was in Lakehurst, New Jersey to report on the arrival of the airship Hindenburg. What follows is an actual recording of the Hindenburg disaster. It's practically standing still now. They've dropped ropes out of the nose of the ship, and they've been taken a hold of down on the field by a number of men. It's starting to rain again. The rain had slacked up a little bit. The back motors of the ship are just holding it just enough to keep it from. It's burst into flames. It burst into flames, and it's falling. It's crashing. Watch it. Watch it. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Get this, Charlie. Get this, Charlie. It's fire, and it's crashing. It's crashing terrible. Oh my. Get out of the way, please. It's burning and bursting into flames, and it's falling on the mooring mast. And all the folks agree that this is terrible. This is the worst of the worst catastrophes in the world. Indecipherable, it's flames. Crashing 400 or 500 feet into the sky in it. It's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. It's smoke, and it's flames now, and the frame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. Oh, the humanity and all the passengers screaming around here. I told you. I can't even talk to people their friends are out there. I can't talk, ladies and gentlemen. Honest, it's just laying there, mass of smoking wreckage. And everybody can hardly breathe and talk and indecipherable. Lady, I'm sorry. Honest, I can hardly breathe. I'm going to step inside, where I cannot see it. Charlie, that's terrible. I can't. Listen, folks, I'm going to have to stop for a minute because I've lost my voice. This is the worst thing I've ever witnessed. Reporter Herbert Morrison as he was recorded yesterday evening in Lakehurst, New Jersey. There was really only one place to go if you wanted a box job pulled, and that was your friendly neighborhood mafia. When I was just a boy, I had become a friend of a mafia capo. Don't get the wrong idea. I didn't rub someone out when I was just a kid. It was winter and his son was skating in Central Park. I guess he did not know that there was some ice you didn't skate on. It never really got that thick. Well, he was skating where he should not have skated, and he ended up falling through the ice. I happened to be close when he fell in, and I pulled him out. This big, burly guy ran towards us, and I almost ran away myself. It turns out he was supposed to look out for Don Guido's son, and thought he was being snatched. Tony was quick to wise him up, and we all rode in a Duesenberg to his house to get warmed up and to get him some dry clothes. That was when I met the Don. After he heard the story, he kissed me and said if I ever needed anything, to come to him. I have never had the need for the mafia or Don Guido's promise, but I think that we do now. We can't go to your G-Men buddies. It would never happen in time. We need to find out now. We freshened up then got back into the car. I don't know why it takes women so long to get ready, but looking at Samantha, I think it is worth it. She is a beauty and smart too. We headed down to a certain restaurant that was a hangout for an underboss for Don Guido. When we got there, I asked Samantha to wait in the car. I walked up to the hood in the doorway and said, I'd like to talk to Mr. Branch, please. The hood tried to give me the bum's rush. I interrupted him and whispered, this involves Don Guido. Are you sure he won't see me? It was like turning on an electric light. He got all apologetic and led me to the back room. Mr. Branch was sitting at a mahogany desk in an expensive leather chair. He didn't even look up as I came in. He just finished reading the paper in front of him, initialed it, and gave it to some flunky. The G headed out the same door I came in. A dolled-up skirt went over and sat on his lap. He treated her, and the honey cooler she gave him on the cheek, like something he had to put up with. He looked up at me, appraising me with his eyes. I'd like to chin with Don Guido. I'm sure he will want to speak me. You see, I'm Simon Maddox, and I am a special friend of the Don. His peepers stared more intently at me for a moment. Well, I've never heard of you, but I'll pass your message along. Does he know how to reach you? I mean, if it is that important, he will want to reach you right away. I gave him 2 telephone numbers. The first one is where I can be reached during the day, the other at night. Oh, that is your home phone number? Actually, it is my landlady's. I was getting tired of the 20 questions. Is that all you need? He nodded yes, and waved me out. This was just one of the reasons that I did not like dealing with the mafia. You could never talk to the person you needed to talk to. You had to play by their rules if you wanted to play at all. No thanks. The office seemed different without Mr. Guthrie skulking around trying to make his job as a building superintendent more profitable. Samantha's coffee was as good as I remembered it. I finished off my cup and we left the office early. As I drove home, the radio played a song by the Westminster Choir. News has just reached us that last Monday the Basque town of Guernica was attacked by the Condor Legion of the German Air Forces on loan to fascist General Francisco Franco. Bombs fell for 3 hours and villagers trying to escape were shot down by machine gun fire from the air. The attack killed over 1,000 Basque civilians and injured over 700. The Spanish government did not see any military significance to the attack. Dazed survivors described a merciless 4-hour bombing and strafing attack by German pilots directed toward the village and its inhabitants. After a couple of days and nights, I needed to bunk. Samantha and I greeted Mrs. O'Grady. I went upstairs to take a nap until dinner. I was sound asleep when I heard a sound I hadn't heard since Prohibition. I was jerked awake by the sounds of a chopper squad spreading its deadly metal rain. I rolled off the bed listening to glass breaking and thud of bullets lodging in walls and furniture. The thundering music of the Thompson submachine guns lasted only about half a minute. Then there was deathly silence, and finally the sound of screeching tires. I stumbled to the stairs, and then fell or ran down them shouting Samantha's and Mrs. O'Grady's names. I found Mrs. O'Grady lying on the floor in the kitchen bleeding from a hole in her right shoulder. She was mercifully unconscious. I heard the breaking of glass behind me as it was stepped on. I looked and saw Samantha, unhurt, walking into the kitchen. She said, "I was upstairs lying down when the attack started." Then she saw Mrs. O'Grady. "Oh my God, is she going to be all right?" I took a dish towel and tried to stop the bleeding. She moaned in pain. Just then, the blower started to ring. I swore and went to answer it, while Samantha took over helping Mama O'Grady. I wanted to get them off the line, so I could call for a meat wagon. "Hello, what do you want? Can you get off the phone?" My voice was rough, demanding. I did not expect who I heard next. It was a voice from my past. It was Don Guido. "What do I want, Simon? What do you want? You came to me. And what is this malarkey about getting off the phone?" It suddenly made sense to me. Mafia? Tommy guns. This conspiracy went a lot deeper than I thought. The silence over the blowers suddenly turned menacing. Not one to lamb out on a fight. Even one over the phone. I let him know how I was feeling. Well, so much for a friend for life. "Listen, Guido, you can choose who you want to side with, but you had better watch out who you decide to bunk with. I'm not going to forget that you sent your chopper squad over to pay a visit after your guy branch found out where I would be." He started to say something, but I cut him off. "I have to take my landlady to the hospital now, and you had better pray that she pulls through. Don't let me catch you in any dark alleys." I hung up the blower. I was done talking to Don Guido, and I needed to get Mrs. O'Grady to the hospital. Samantha and I were in the waiting room after we got Mrs. O'Grady to the hospital. I had told Mrs. Brock that Charlie and Joe would need some place to stay, and that I was taking Mrs. O'Grady to the hospital. She had assured me that she would let them know and that she would pray over Mrs. O. That settled, Samantha and I needed to make plans. "We can stay in my apartment, Simon, but if this plot goes up into the FBI, that would not be a good hideout." The situation looked bleak. "Yeah, babe, and we still need to find a safe man too. Not just any can opener, but a good one." I spotted one of Don Guido's goons over by the entrance. I gave Samantha the high sign and put my hand on my heater. I did not want either of us to start spitting metal in the waiting room with all those innocent plugs inside. Samantha and I got up keeping our eye on Don Guido's G. He was looking for us, checking all of the mugs. We managed to get to the door before he saw us. He headed towards us. I saw Don Guido's 1936 Packard Super 8 touring car sitting near the door with another of his goons standing next to it. I said, "Well, this is it, Samantha. It looks like we are going to have to burn powder to get out of here. Let's end this now. I'm tired of my friends being hurt. Instead, we'll take the fight to them." I fisted my Roscoe and headed out the door. The goon outside started towards me as I came out the door. When he saw my Roscoe, he started waving his hands at me telling me not to shoot. I almost plugged him because of what his buddies did to Mrs. O'Grady in her house, but I am just a little bit better than that. I don't drill anybody in cold blood. The back door to the Packard opened and Don Guido stepped out. "Simon, you and I have to talk before the streets start to run with our blood. My boys did not ventilate the boarding house. Somebody set you up, so holster your rod, and come let's talk like gentlemen." He pointed behind me. "Besides, your kitten is much too cute to be fighting in the streets." Samantha had pulled her rod and followed me to the parking lot. I was so proud of this woman. Don Guido's man held the door for us as we all got in. The goon that had been looking for us came up to the window huffing and puffing. He was about to tell the Don that he had lost us when he saw Samantha waving at him from inside the car. The Don had more instructions for him. "Go inside and find out how Mrs. O'Grady is. Tell the hospital to put her into a private room and to send all the bills to me. Now hurry." I joked with Don Guido. "He's been getting too much linguine and wine, Don. You had better cut him off before he hurts himself." The Don laughed at what I had said. "Yes, he is getting a little round to do the job." That was one good thing about Prohibition. It kept everybody on their toes. Now in this time of peace, they all get soft. His expression darkened and he turned serious. "As for the chopper squad bringing you a present, you have Branch to thank for that. He has been making the wrong friends. He was not happy with me deciding not to get involved with Hop and was getting cozy with Mr. Blue. Mr. Blue will sell narcotics and Branch heard the dinkling of all the kale he thought he was missing out on. He fingered you to Mr. Blue and Blue sent his goons around. You know I owe you for Tony Jr. and I never forget my debts." He looked at Samantha and told how his son had been rescued. He made a big deal out of it, where I had not boasted of my role in the event. You see somebody in trouble, you help. You don't know what my Tony is doing now, do you, Simon? Simon shook his head no. He is a doctor out in California. He does plastic surgery for all those Hollywood stars. He says that he makes more money than I do, but I don't know about that. He would like to see you someday, after we get our business over with. Speaking of business, that's why I was wanting to talk to you. I need a G for a box job. Not a can opener, but a really keen operator. You see, it's one of them new safes. It's very well made. It might need a Peterman. Also, after today we need a place to hide out, and could probably use a new tin can too. Don Guido was quiet as he thought for a moment. I can take care of all your problems. Well, at least the few you mentioned. He laughed at his cleverness. I've got the perfect joint for you to stay low. It's in the garment district. No one will think to look for you there. And there is an Amich down the hall. It's a pay phone, but I have somebody that answers it. The goon came out of the hospital accompanied by a professional-looking man. Don Guido stepped out of the car with Samantha, and I following. The man offered his hand to Don Guido. Good afternoon, sir. I am Dr. Sheffield. I have been attending to Mrs. O'Grady, who I understand is a friend of yours. Don Guido nodded in assent, and the doctor continued. She's going to be all right. The bullet was removed with no additional damage being done. The bleeding has been stopped, and she is resting comfortably. It's a very good thing that bullet went through a wall before it hit Mrs. O'Grady. A lot of the force of the bullet was expended. After all, it was fired from a Thompson submachine gun. If it had went through a window instead, it could have ripped her arm off. In that case, Mrs. O'Grady would most likely have died. She cannot have visitors today, and we're going to keep her for a few days. After that she can go home, but she'll need at least a week of rest. The Don said, Thank you, doctor. I'm sure she will be in good hands. The doctor bowed his head and went back inside the hospital. Lou, Don Guido addressed the goon. Take Mr. Maddox's car and swap it with one of the cars at the garage on 42nd Street. Make sure it has a radio and is in good working order, but not too flashy. Also get word to Lefty Jackson. There is a job I need him to do for me. Lou said that he would get right on it and left. After we had all gotten back into the car, the Don said, I hope you won't mind a late dinner. I was busy taking care of things and I missed out on Mrs. Guido's fine fare. He winked at Samantha. I'm going to have to send a bunch of flowers to my wife now. We all laughed. It will take some time for Lou to be back with the car. Both Samantha and myself assured him that dinner would be great. Don Guido addressed his driver, Pierre's on 61st Street. He turned to Samantha and said, I hear they have a new chef and the food is heavenly. Well, at least that's what Mama Guido said. They all enjoyed another good laugh on the way to the restaurant. They were returning from the restaurant. Mama Guido was correct that the food was heavenly when they heard a report from the car radio. This radio station is reporting that Egypt and Saudi Arabia signed a treaty of friendship. A spokesman from Great Britain was quoted as saying, This treaty is imbued with the sincere desire to strengthen the bonds of friendship between the two countries. Don Guido remarked, It looks like the countries in Europe are not the only ones taking sides. Our country had better be very careful or it will get pulled into the fight. No one spoke as the car returned to the hospital, but everybody was thinking about those prophetic words. Lou was leaning against the hood of a Ford Model A coupe. He met the Packard as it pulled into the hospital parking lot. Don Guido told me to call him if I needed anything else. Lou opened the door for us and handed me a piece of paper. The keys are in the flivver. I wrote down where you will be perched while on the lam. A broad will be waiting for you. A nice little skirt from south of the border. Oh yeah, Dis G will call you about the box job. Lou then got in the passenger seat of the Packard. The Packard then drove off. We got in the flivver to drive to the garment district. This tin can had a radio just like the Don said it would. We listened to the New York Philharmonic Symphony with Alexander Smollins conducting. There was a Mexican doll on the stoop of the building we were supposed to hide out in. I pulled up at the curb. The doll pointed at the alley next to the joint and said, Go there. She sounded like a bad imitation of Tonto. She directed us to an empty parking spot and then led us inside through the back door of an old apartment house that had seen better days. We followed her up to the second story, and she opened a door for us halfway down the hall. She left us with these words of wisdom, Stay here. The room was a combination bedroom and lounge. There was only one bed. Samantha and I stared at it for a moment, and I broke the silence by saying, I'll just sleep in one of these chairs. Samantha looked around the room, including the attached bathroom and the dresser standing in one corner, full of clothes. She got a flannel nightgown and changed in the bathroom. When she came out, she sat on one side of the bed and patted the other. You can sleep here if you behave. I took off my tie and got ready for bed. To answer her, I said, Samantha, I am so tired that I can't do anything but behave. She laughed, and I got into the bed on the edge of my side. I didn't want to queer up what I had with her, and besides, I fell asleep before I could even think of doing anything. It was a peaceful dream. I was holding someone close. Everything felt calm. Bang, bang, bang. What was that noise? Bang, bang, bang. I jolted awake to loud knocking at the door. not a dream this time. My mind snapped to focus. The person I'd been dreaming about was real. I looked over and realized I was still holding Samantha, my arm awkwardly resting across her. I quickly pulled away, startled. "Just a minute. I'll be right there," I called out. I grabbed the first pajama pants I could find, black silk with red hearts, and carefully untangled myself from Samantha, who mumbled something and turned over. I hurried to the door just as the person outside raised a hand to knock again. She gave my pajamas a quick glance and stifled a laugh. Without saying a word, she gestured for the phone, then turned and walked back toward her open room next door. I was now evil. I was having a great dream, and some refugee from Mexico had to wake me up, be pounding on the door. I picked up the receiver and growled, "Yeah?" into the phone. The voice that came out of the receiver was steady and low. "I understand you need a box job pulled. What's the meat? Will I get to look at it beforehand? It's one of the new safe, a protect-all. No look ahead. The job has to be sharp, in and out." The man thought, well, it'll have to be a Peter job. Any complications? There may be somebody to silence before the lay. We will have to take it as it comes. Is tomorrow good? Any complications or loose ends are your problem. I won't go into the joint until everything is cool. I just get paid for the box, nothing else, see? Pick me up on the corner of Madison and 42nd tomorrow at 9. It had better be eggs and coffee, or you won't see me. I responded, "That's Kippy. See you then." He just hung up his blower and the job was on. I shook a leg getting back to the room before anybody could finger me in those pajamas. When I got back, Samantha was up. She was just going into the bathroom to change. While she was in there, I found a gray suit that would fit, and I got out of those pajamas quick. Samantha had found an outfit that was the bee's knees. I about flipped my wig when she came out of the bathroom. Once I closed my yap, we went across the street to a hash joint for a well-needed lunch. The food was surprisingly good. After we got back to the room, I wised her up on the lay for the next day. I told her a lot of our part would be off the cuff, but time was a-wastin', and we needed to get the lowdown on Miles' plan. We spent the rest of the afternoon and evening listening to the radio. We listened to the Lannan Orchestra, the Lehigh University Glee Club, and others. We mostly tried to listen to music. We had enough excitement in real life. We did hear a spot of news, though. The Nazis won 2/3 majority in the Danzig Volkstag, which is a general election in Germany. The next morning was Sunday, and we woke early. I had made sure that I slept on my side of the bed. Samantha hadn't said anything about the other night, so I guess she didn't notice. I figured that Miles would attend church, so he would keep a good impression with those he wanted to sway to his side. We breakfasted on coffee and day-old pastries we had bought the day before. I actually think they were 2 day-old pastries that they had grifted on us. We arrived at exactly 9 a.m. at the corner of Madison and 42nd Streets, right across from Grand Central Station and next to the bus terminal. I guess Lefty wanted to have an escape route, just in case he smelled a copper. A man, who I assumed was Lefty, was standing on the corner holding a leather case in his left hand. I pulled up to the curb and Samantha opened her door and slid over closer to me. "Lefty Jackson?" I held out my mitt for him to shake. Lefty looked at my mitt and the front sheet he was supposed to share. "You have got to be joking, right? I'm carrying nitro in this case. Do you know what happens if it gets upset?" I pulled my mitt back and said, "It explodes. Would you rather ride in the rumble seat? I know it's very unstable and I promise to drive very carefully." He still hesitated, so I said, "Look, if it explodes, I'll pay you double." He laughed and eased into the car. I drove very carefully, but not too careful. That could cause an accident. Trust me, it is true. We headed over the GW Bridge and south into New Jersey. I kept glancing over at Lefty. He seemed to be comfortable with my driving. That is until we hit the dirt road that led to Miles' house. I tried to go as slow as I could, but he finally told me to stop the car. Lefty got out of the car and said, "The job is at the end of this dirt road, right? Well, I'll walk, thank you. Just have the joint ready when I get there. I should use all of the nitro during the box job, so we can all ride out." Miles' house was just a little farther. We went around a corner, and there was Miles' joint. His tin can was not in sight. Samantha let out the breath that she had been holding. I smiled at her and pulled up to the house. We both got out and just stood in front of the door, waiting for the other to do something. I finally said, "I guess we should knock." I pulled out my Roscoe and knocked on the door with it. After a moment, I shrugged and reached for the doorknob. Both Samantha and I could have been knocked over with a feather when the knob started to turn. I aimed my heater at the door and waited for it to open. When it opened, I could see the old broad from the other house, the twist that had socked me with the frying pan. I pushed her back with my .38 aimed right between her eyes. She looked like life had thrown her a curve. I told her to grab air, and then I asked, "Why aren't you in church?" "Heathen." I asked Samantha to keep her covered, while I searched the house to see if she was alone. She was alone in the house. I tied her up, gagged and blindfolded her. I tucked her into a corner and went to the door to check on Lefty. He was just walking up to the joint with a question on his mug. Everything is Jake and the box is waiting for you. He took a look at the tied-up broad and motioned Samantha and I outside. A few minutes went by and we heard a whump in the house. Lefty opened the door and waved us in. We went to the safe. The door was still on, although there was some smoke floating around the box. I turned to Lefty and said the obvious, "It's not open." Lefty smiled at me and took a short-handled sledgehammer out of his bag. He brought it down hard on the top of the safe with a bang. Samantha and I stared in disbelief as the door fell off the safe. Lefty put his hammer back into his bag and walked out to the flivver. Both Samantha and I started laughing hysterically as we looked through the safe. There were some interesting things in the safe, and we took all of them. There was a .45 automatic, about $100,000 in dough, and best of all, a stack of documents all in German. I looked around the room. The explosion had really wrecked the joint. I didn't think that Miles was going to get his deposit back. I checked the skag before we left. She was all right and breathing fine, but I could feel the rage in her. We got in the car, and I handed Lefty a pack of $50 bills. He tried to refuse it, saying that Don Guido had already paid him. I forced him to take it. That's just in case we don't make it back to the Apple. We all had a good laugh and drove away. It turned out not to be so funny after all. Just after we got off the dirt road, we passed Miles' Airstream. Lefty scrunched down, and I know we shouldn't have done it. Samantha and I waved at him. I was soon to realize just how foolish that was. Watching Lefty walk away into the bus station, I figured I'd never lay blinders on him again. The day had gone well, and it was almost time for dinner. I thought we deserved a nice dinner out for a change. I steered the flivver towards 61st Street and Pierre's. The maitre d' was happy to seat us. He recognized us as guests of Don Guido from the night before. We were enjoying a hearty meal when the waiter brought up a blower. "Call for you, important, sir." I answered the blower. "It was Lou Maddox. You've got to get out of there." "Why did you plug the broad anyway? That wasn't smart." "Don Guido said that the heat is on and the joint you were at ain't safe no more." "The flivver may still be Jake. He didn't know." "Good luck, gumshoe. You'd better go on the lam. You are in Dutch big time. And take care of that skirt. She's a keeper." The next thing I heard was the click as he hung up. Samantha had been giving the documents from the box the up and down. It turns out that she could read German. Samantha was all excited. She was holding some of the papers under my nose and saying that she had found something important. All I knew was that we had to scram. I braced Samantha, tossed some cabbage on the table, and we breezed out of there. I took off out of the parking lot, leaving Tire Miles to show where I had dangled from. Samantha was trying to give me the lowdown on what she had found, but right now the important lay was to get out of sight and lie low. I turned on the radio to see if I could hear something about us on the ether. Breaking news about the house burglary in northern New Jersey today. The thieves stole an unknown amount of cash from a safe in the house of the brother to the Deputy Chief Jones of the New York City Police Department. What makes this crime especially heinous is the fact that the robbers shot Miss Heidi Strum, a cousin of the chief, in cold blood. The criminals involved have been identified as Mr. Simon Maddox and Miss Samantha Goldman. Citizens are warned that they are armed and dangerous. They should not be approached, just call the police. And stay tuned to this station for further developments on the case. Well, we are for it now. All of the bridges are going to be watched, and the bulls will be out to cop us, but more likely will be gunning for us. See, it'll save the city the cost of a trial, and will bring justice for Miss Strum. But we didn't kill her. And what I found exposes a great Nazi conspiracy here in New York. The FBI will help us, we just have to hide out until tomorrow morning when the office opens. I can then call them and get this all straightened out. Maybe, but we still have to make it through the night. I racked my brain for an out. Finally, I found it. I know a G that has an old speakeasy on the south side. He can put us up for the night. Trying to sleep was not going to happen. Not with Samantha saying wow. And oh my God, as she read the documents from the safe. I knew we were in Dutch. I just hoped the papers could make everything Jake. Samantha finally finished reading the documents and came up to where I was sitting in the former speakeasy. "Simon, what we have found is big. It is so important that we could be Bonnie and Clyde and still get off. We are not just looking at the rise of fascism in America. We are not just looking at sabotage of our industries. What we have here are the plans to get a Nazi foothold in America, in New York itself." Samantha was very excited about this. I thought I should bring her back down to reality some. "Samantha, we are safe crackers and murderers, at least according to the coppers. They will probably shoot first and ask questions later. What we've come up with doesn't matter, unless we get it to a high pillow where it matters. Simon, what we have is the plans, and very good plans too, to make Long Island into a defensible part of the Nazi powers. They have and are importing weapons and are training the people, the German-American Bund, to wield them. I don't mean a few rifles and shotguns. I'm talking about submachine guns, light field artillery, and more. They currently have at least 2 submarines bringing shipment in from Europe. Later on, those submarines will support the land forces. They are just waiting for the right time to strike. Tomorrow I can call the FBI and let them know about this. They can shield us from the police and round up the spies. We have a duty to our country to stop the fascists. I held up my hands in surrender. All right, you win. Can we at least bunk before tomorrow? Samantha giggled and sat on my lap. This was a different Samantha than I had seen. We swapped honey coolers, and the night went on from there. Next time I'm hiding from the coppers, I just have to make sure I have Samantha along. Samantha finally managed to get some sleep. We both woke up early in the morning. The G who owned the old drum had a stocked refrigerator, a coffee pot, and a stove, so Samantha cooked them all a big breakfast. She cooked enough for 4 people, which included Paul, the owner of the speakeasy, Roxy his flame, myself, and Samantha. Paul was a good friend of mine, so I gave him the lowdown on everything. He was sympathetic to our problems, but the coppers were putting the screws to everyone, and we wouldn't be able to stay at his joint another night. I would not want the bulls to have a reason to throw Paul into the slammer, so the sooner we leave the better. It had just turned 8 a.m. when Samantha made her call to the FBI. It was answered by the secretary. As soon as Samantha spoke, the secretary recognized her voice and started giving advice. Honey, where are you? No, don't tell me. Everyone is looking for you. Why did you do it? I know that Special Agent Fitzgerald can be a trial at times, but you should not have joined up with that criminal Maddox. Samantha finally got a word in. Mr. Maddox is not a criminal. He is being framed. Let me talk to Special Agent Fitzgerald, and I can get this all made, Jake. It took a few minutes before Fitzgerald came on the blower. Fitzgerald was angry too. What the hell do you think you are doing, Goldman? The police in 3 states are on the lookout for you and have issued orders to shoot on sight. You are currently suspended and will probably be thrown off the FBI. Why did you break into that house, blow the safe, and shoot that woman? I did not shoot anybody. That woman was tied up, but fine when we left. We only blew the safe to get evidence on Miles. He is your real criminal. It was your gun that shot and killed that woman. You committed the crime of breaking into a safe to get evidence? You know that any evidence gotten through a criminal enterprise will not be admissible in court. Did you also know that Mr. Miles is a friend of both the police and the mayor's office? I put in my report that my gun had been taken a hood when I narrowly escaped an attempt on my life. That evidence is not for any court, it's for the government. And I've got pictures of Miles meeting with men high in the police force, the district attorney's office, and the mayor's office. They are all in on it. You would not believe what they are planning. I think I've listened to enough unfounded allegations from you. A woman is dead, and it was your gun that killed her. Also, there is the matter of a missing $100,000. Stop stalling and tell me where I can pick you up, so you won't get shot by the cops. You will have your day in court and can explain everything there. Samantha was going to continue to try to explain, but that flatfoot was not listening to her. He had already made up his mind. She was guilty. The evidence said so. I hung up the blower. It's no good talking to him, Samantha. He already has you pegged as a criminal. Samantha began sobbing, and I held her in my arms while trying to think how to get us out from behind the 8-ball. Miles had the bulge, and we had to turn that ship around. As I was holding Samantha in my arms, I ran through possible options in my mind. We could head to Long Island and lay low there, but Deputy Sawyer might catch us. He's known for being strict. Don Guido was out. The cops were in a strange mood, and I didn't want to get him involved. Where could I go to hide from Miles and the police? Somewhere unexpected, a place I'd do my best to avoid. Jail under an alias with a false charge? No, too confining, and I might get caught up in the system and end up stuck longer than I planned. I then got a real goofy idea. There was some risk involved, but if it worked it would be perfect. I whispered my plan into Samantha's ear. Her body stiffened as I told her what I had planned. Then she started laughing like her wits had left her. When she could speak again, she said, I love your plan. It's so goofy it might work. And if it doesn't work, we won't be stuck in the pen wasting away. Now we had to only make to dusk to try it. The day seemed to drag while we waited for dusk. Every strange noise caused our hearts to race, expecting the worst. Finally, it was getting closer to dusk when I felt it would be safe to move. Samantha and I cleaned up and got dressed for the evening. Paul had a spare suit that I could borrow, and Roxy loaned Samantha one of her tamer flapper outfits. Moxie even lent her a large pearl necklace that went aces with the outfit. I handed Paul a satchel. He took it, but was confused. I said, use it to open your club again. Put Roxy back on the stage. Make her an honest woman. We pulled out of the secret garage Paul had and drove north toward Harlem. There were more police officers patrolling the city, but we weren't stopped. Once we entered Harlem, the police presence faded. While our concerns about the police had eased, they were now replaced by worries about the local criminal organizations. We listened to the radio, enjoying Berrigan's orchestra and a couple of comedians, Tim and Irene, but our mood was far from lighthearted. We pulled up in front of the Onyx Club. I didn't even bother to park it or turn it off. We entered the club and did not get gunned down right away. Things were looking up. I wasn't wearing a flogger, so I just checked my hat. If Samantha had checked even one piece of her outfit, except the strand of pearls, we would have been arrested. I walked up to the host and said that we would like to see Mr. Blue. The host said, "Yes, sir. Yusa may get to meet the boss, but yous forgot to check something, Mr. Charlie." A bouncer pointed us to the check room, and the door was open so we could enter. We passed through so the paying customers wouldn't get curious. The bouncer pointed at a small table, and I took my .45 out of the shoulder holster, the .38 out of my pocket, and then emptied my pockets onto the table. Samantha just shrugged when the G pointed at her. There was no way to hide anything in that dress she was wearing. The bouncer patted us both down anyway, seeming to take extra time with Samantha. When the papers under her skirt rustled, he just pulled them out and set them on the table. We were led down different corridors, through somebody's dining room and more corridors until we were left in a dimly lit room. Mr. Blue's voice boomed out of the darkness at us. "Now why don't I just drill y'all right here? Or call Copper and throw you out to them? Of course I'll give you back your gats first. Never let it be said that Mr. Blue is not good to his guests." This was not Jake at all. I had to get him thinking. "Mr. Blue, you are a twit." I heard a gasp from the darkness behind me, and Mr. Blue started to growl. I continued, "Miles is bonkoing you. Every time he thinks about you up here in Harlem doing him favors, he starts laughing. Don't you think it's a little late to be trying to save yourself by telling tales about my partner, Mr. Miles? He asked me for your skirts, Rod, so I could frame you both. Well, you didn't need me to put the finger on you for the box job." He laughed. "Hey, where's that dough?" "Don't worry about the dough. Just take a look at those papers my doll had. They are plans for Miles and the Nazis to take over Long Island. Haven't you ever heard the Nazi propaganda? They don't like your people or hers." I pointed to Samantha. I could hear Mr. Blue's unspoken question. "They don't like her because she is a Maki." Samantha gasped when I said that, but times were tough and I couldn't pull any punches. "Well, that man is wacky. There is nothing wrong with this dame that a right jar head could not fix." "Well, let me get the slant on what you say. Until I do, you can be guests of Mr. Blue." It took 2 days for Blue to get the slant on Miles. The next time we saw him, he was about to blow his top. We were lucky, though. He wasn't angry with us. "That four-flusher, that gator-faced gum beater, I'm gonna send him to Beluthahatchee." I did not exactly know what he said, but I knew what he meant. "So Maddox, how are we gonna bring some hurt to him? I've got the power, and I've got the way to sock this mug man where it counts. Just point me where I need to bring it. The place to hurt him, to stop him, is this Camp Siegfried on Long Island. We've got this map showing spots we need to check out." I showed him the map. "The problem is that the coppers are looking for us, and we can't just stroll down Broadway on the way to check things out. We know that he is meeting the U-boats and getting supplies. We just don't know exactly where or how. I need to be there to get the load down on the camp. That's the only way we can make a plan to rub him and the camp out." Mr. Blue paused for a moment, then smiled slyly. "I've got a way to get you there," he said. "Those wealthy folks on the island need workers to keep their farms running. With spring in full swing and everything growing fast, they need extra hands to help with the harvest and tend the fields. To serve this need and make a little dough, we have a truck that picks up the park apes here in Harlem and drops them off every morning at the farms. You could ease onto the island by day, do your thing at night, and catch the bus back on the return trip with the tired park apes. Sound Jake to you? It just might work. Sounds like a plan to me. I just want to get going. I'm going goofy just sitting around." "Well, the truck already took the boys there, so you'll have to wait until tomorrow. Let me get some rags in here and get you a hot. Y'all are gonna have to build up your strength." We were just relaxing to the sounds coming from the ether when we heard this news. Sir Neville Henderson was sent as British ambassador to Berlin. The Prime Minister explained his main purpose was to facilitate the Anglo-German rapprochement and maintain peace through appeasement. Locally, the authorities have widened their search for Maddox and Goldman, who are wanted for robbery and murder. It is believed that they have escaped the citywide dragnet and are headed toward places where they can spend their ill-gotten gain. I just laughed at the news. If the newshawks did not know where we were, then the coppers had even less of a clue. A nice young darky skirt brought in some grub. Samantha and I were ravenous and finished up fast. One of Mr. Blue's hoods brought me some work clothes, shoes, and polish. I was about to shine the work shoes when he laughed. "Noser, the polish tain't for the shoes, it is for your pale mug. Tain't no way yer can pass for a park ape with that pasty skin o' yours. Use better collar and nod. The truck leaves early, e'en before the sun." I took his advice and went to bunk. I would use the polish in the morning and not dirty the sheets. Samantha climbed into bed and held me loosely. It took me longer to get to sleep, but I had nice dreams. I got up early, or so I thought, slapped on some polish, and almost missed the truck. Mr. Blue was right there to provide me with moral support. If you want to be one of Aunt Hager's children, then you can't live like a storm buzzard. You gotta do things lightly, slidey, and politely. My boys will learn ya. Now get on the truck. I'd seen better ways to get around than on this trash heap. You call this a truck? What happened to it? Oh, it was hit by the first thing smoking. But we fixed it up, Real Jake. It'll put those squad cars to shame. He tossed me the brown polish. Better hang on to that to touch up. It's a long time till tomorrow. Oh, and one more thing. If you get beat, just take it. Say you're sorry and thank him or her. He tossed me a couple of apples. You'll need these, missing breakfast and all. As soon as we started, the men began singing. What followed was a song that told the story of someone being chased, accompanied by the sounds of dogs. I later learned the song was called Old Rattler. I could see how this song had been passed down through generations, and how it helped them get through a hard day's work. It made me realize that this situation might be more challenging than I expected. Once the truck reached Long Island, it toured the farms and dropped off workers. At some farms, they brought tools with them. At others, they went empty-handed. I asked one of the men about it. Well, Mr. Grover, the farmer, says we mess up his tools too much, so we have to bring our own. But, honestly, everyone knows that if you put big rocks in a wheelbarrow, it's going to leave miles. Makes me wonder if some of these farmers really think things through. He then apologized. I guess he forgot I was one of them. I got off the truck with the last group of workers. As soon as I could sneak away, I planned to head toward Camp Siegfried and wait until dark. Standing near the truck wasn't a good idea since an older woman hit me with her cane and said, "Don't you know when to move for your betters?" I bowed and apologized, though in my mind, I felt like giving her a piece of my mind. I followed the others, managed to get into the tall grass, and then I was gone. Passing through the Long Island countryside, I learned two very important things. Stay away from open spaces and watch out for dogs. I had to be extra cautious because I didn't want to draw attention from the authorities. My disguise wouldn't be enough to keep me out of trouble, and I had no desire to end up in a detention center. I eventually made it to Yaffank and decided to hide in the cattails near the lake. I ate one of the apples Mr. Blue had given me. I almost threw the core away, but then I realized it might attract questions. So, I tucked it deep in the reeds and took a nap. When I woke up, it was near dark, and I had a visitor. A 2.5-foot long snake was sticking his tongue out at me. I don't like snakes. I was born and bred in the Big Apple. I could deal with rats, even the big ones down on the docks, but the way snakes moved without legs is unnatural to me. It was reddish-brown and right in front of me. I tried not to breathe and stared it down. It finally slithered off, and I took a deep breath. I don't think I scared it off. It was probably just hungry. I got up out of those reeds as fast as I could. I looked at a copy of the map that Samantha gave me. There were 4 XS that I had to check out here. I would try visit all of them tonight, and look at the spot on the northeast coast of the island. The first X was at the front gate on a small hillock. It only took me a few minutes of searching until I found the hidden compartment. Inside the compartment was a lever. I checked to make sure that I was alone, and I flipped the lever. I heard a loud click and saw a rectangular section of turf 1 foot by 3 foot rise up an inch. I bent down and grabbed the hatch. It wouldn't lift up, but it did pivot to the right. It revealed 3 steps that led into a small bunker with a machine gun. The bunker was so small that only one person could fit comfortably in it, and they would have to lie down. There were shelves within easy reach containing coiled-up 50-round belts. I could see where the firing port would be opened and the dirt and grass cleared out of the way. I took the time to break the machine gun down and remove the firing pin. I put the machine gun back together and put it back where it belonged. This would have been a good way to stop unwanted visitors. I crawled back out of the bunker and closed the hatch with a click. I saw that the lever had gone back to its original place. I closed up the hidden compartment and hit it again. X number 1 investigated and taken care of. Number 2 was behind the grandstand on the parade ground. There was no moon in the sky, so I wasn't concerned about being seen as I made my way to the back of the grandstand. Luck was on my side when I spotted someone smoking in the shadows. That's why smoking while on guard duty is a bad idea. I crept a little closer and caught the scent of the cigarette. It was strong and cheap, not the kind typically used by our side. A beam of light cut through the darkness as the man opened a hidden door in the back of the grandstand. He was wearing a standard uniform. Beyond the door, a metal spiral staircase led downward. The man picked up what looked like a harmless piece of metal, but it turned out to be a submachine gun with a large magazine. It had to be an armory. The security made sense. If he hadn't stepped outside for a smoke, I might never have found the place, or walked right into an ambush. That's 2 objectives confirmed. No one else came out of the hidden door as I made my way slowly to the 3rd X. The X was indicating a hill towards the back of the camp. I found the secret hatch on the side of the hill. Knowing that there were guards present in the camp, I had been extra quiet moving around. I now put my ear up to the hatch trying to hear something. I heard nothing. Thus more assured that there was no one in the bunker, I pulled the hidden lever that opened the hatch. The hatch, also made of metal, swung open easily and with no noise. These Germans were so efficient they kept the hinge well oiled. This bunker was much larger than the one at the gate. I did not have a light, not that I would have used it knowing there were guards about, so I could not inspect the bunker and its contents. One thing I did notice was a smell like gasoline. I would mention it to Samantha. She might know what it was. That's 3 down, 1 X to go. It was right in the middle of the inn, so I thought that it would be under the inn. The bar was still open at the inn, and they had a few customers, so I waited hiding under a bush in the shadows. I must have fallen asleep because when I blinked my eyes the inn was dark and empty. Searching around the inn found that the kitchen door would be easiest to open. Blessing the efficiency of Germans again, I picked the well-oiled lock. I opened and shut it behind me. I also locked the door again just in case they had a roving patrol checking doors. I crawled through the kitchen, not wanting to bump into something and break it. Once I found the basement door, I went through, shut it behind me, and lit a match. There was a string hanging down that went to a light at the bottom of the stairs. I pulled the string, and the cellar was flooded with light. I saw what I expected to find in the cellar. Some kegs of beer and ale, German of course. A pile of cheese wheels and a selection of hanging cured meats. There were bags of flour, potatoes, and assorted vegetables. And of course a wine rack against one wall. First things first, I was hungry. I broke off a hunk of cheese and liberated a couple of sausages. A piece of cheese, a couple of bites of sausage, and I was ready to look for a hidden door. I searched the walls and the floor without finding anything. There was nothing concealed by the kegs either. There was a clever little switch on the wine rack allowing it to be swung to the side and revealing a trap door. I opened the trap door and peered into darkness. Another match showed a wooden ladder and a shelving unit with an oil lamp on top of it. I tossed the match down the hole and climbed down the ladder. I then lit the lamp with another match. This little chamber looked very old, certainly older than the inn. It was probably used for smuggling a long time ago. The shelves contained more money and a set of papers similar to those we had taken from the safe. I was disappointed not to find more. I retraced my steps, leaving everything like it was. I figured that the best place to hide the day out was back in the reeds. I just hoped that the snake would not take a fancy to my cheese or sausage. The sun was shining down on me, waking me up with its welcome, yet oppressive heat. I was a bit hungry, so I decided to have some cheese to ease my rumbling stomach. The heat from the sun had melted part of it in my pocket. I forced myself to eat it, trying not to think too much about the smell. I decided to take a bite of sausage to kill the flavor that hung around my mouth and palate. Dang if that snake had not gloomed off with one of my sausages. I ended up eating the entire remaining sausage. Then I touched up my shoebox disguise. I added a little bit of mud to make it look more real. I could not hear much beside the soft ocean breeze, so I popped up to see if the coast was clear. Actually, the coast was a few miles away, but you know what I mean. Not seeing anyone, I decided to sneak out of the reeds. I thought that it might be around lunchtime, so I might see who was normally here during the day. There were no brown shirts in uniform, just a bunch of townies having a beer with lunch. The only uniform I did see was Deputy Sawyer's. I did not know if he was here looking around or just having lunch. I reasoned that he was looking around because he was not drinking a beer. This was reinforced when I noticed the glass of milk in front of him. Pulling back from the outdoor dining area, I carefully sneaked around until I was hidden in the bushes under the kitchen window. I was just sitting there minding my own business when some G dumped a bucket of water out the window and all over me. They must have used the water to mop the floor because the water was a mixture of dirt, soap, and God knows what. I managed not to sputter because my mouth had been open and the taste was worse than the cheese had been. Give me an all-night stakeout in a hash house with old coffee and greasy food any day. And I was in the shade of the building, so the sun would not help to dry me off. I managed to inch myself through the bushes to be close to the open office window. The voices inside were low and in German, but I had been brushing up on my German to piece together what they were saying. Okay, I did not exactly know what they were saying, but 4 words stuck in my mind. Undersea boat, Samstag, Nacht, and Feuerwerken. An undersea boat, Saturday night, and fireworks. I did not know what the fireworks were for, but at least they would not come as a surprise. I debated with myself whether to leave now or go back on the truck this afternoon. I decided to stay, but after I heard the manager arguing with the cook about missing sausages, I decided not to steal any more food from the inn. Wet, tired, and hungry, I sneaked out of the bushes by the inn and went back to wait for night by returning to hide in the weeds. I about jumped out of my skin when Deputy Sawyer crept up behind me and asked in a menacing voice, "What do you think you are doing skulking around my town, boy?" I kept my upper body low to the ground and mumbled something about being lost. Lost? I'd say you were lost. You're in a different county. Never mind, not in the land o' darkness. Don't be surprised. Jig, I know your jazz. I'll ask you again, boy. Why are you on my island? I pointed over my shoulder toward the farm and said, "Just workin' the farm, masser. I got lost, masser." Don't beat this old jig. Just show me the way and I go fast. Va come here again. I thought I was pretty convincing and almost home free. The manager of the inn saw us and came over. What is this darky doing on my camp deputy? I think he is a subversive, trying to do something against us peaceful white folk. As a matter of fact, we had some food stolen from the inn last night. He grabbed my pocket, the one with the cheese residue in it, and ripped it off. See, deputy, he was the thief. I demand you arrest him and get him off my camp. Deputy Sawyer grabbed me by the collar and elbow and frog-marched me to his squad car and threw me in the back. I knew this was it. I'd never see Samantha again. She'd end up as one of Mr. Blue's dames. And I'd be making small rocks out of big rocks, unless I got the electric cure. He had not radioed into the clubhouse yet. Maybe I could still get away. The squad car drove out the gate and then pulled off onto the side of the road once it was around the corner. Deputy Sawyer turned around, looked at me hard, and said, "What makes you think I would not recognize you, Maddox? That's a god-awful disguise. I know you didn't murder some broad in cold blood. Tell me what is going on and don't lie." I told him everything that had happened. He only interrupted me once or twice saying, "I knew you did that. That's just what I would do." When I had finished, he asked what the plan was. "Well, I've got to get up to the northeast coast and find out where the U-boat offloads its cargo. Then I can set up the ambush points and stop the arms shipments. After that, I'll destroy the arms at the camp. Hopefully I'll get to drill Miles and all of the fun. You just be careful that you don't drill any of the good citizens of Yaffank, and we'll get along just fine. I'm tired of all these fascists dirtying up my town. You know I lost a cousin in the war over in Spain fighting the fascists. It's time to pay them back." He drove me to a deserted dirt road on the outskirts of town. "This is the best I can do for you, Maddox. Don't get caught." Waving to the deputy in the squad car seemed so out of character that I just disappeared into the brush that threatened to slowly take back the path and erase this sign of man's presence. Great. Now I'm waxing poetic. It must be the fumes from the shoe polish. That, or the hunger I feel. Living at Mrs. O'Grady's has been a kindness that most men don't get these days. I can't wait until this mess is over and things can go back to where they were. I made my way through the wilderness that was Long Island. I steered clear of another house as I made my way towards the shore. If they keep building down here, Long Island will soon be as crowded as the Apple. I looked both ways and crossed a newly paved road. Even in the Depression, WPA finds things to build and ways to keep men working. I could see the Sound now and walked to the coast. The map showed the X directly to the north by northeast on the coast. I walked through farmland as I neared the coast. I stayed close to brush-covered fences in an effort to remain out of sight. The sight of the beaches on Long Island's coast was beautiful. I only hoped that my fight was successful and the Nazi foothold on Long Island would shrink rather than grow like a festering boil. I followed a dirt road up to the X point on the map. I could see that this road was well maintained without any large ruts or bumps. Like you did not want a lot of bumps if you were moving ammunition or explosives. The road ended at a small beach. I could see where a truck had been parked here for hours. I could tell by the oil spot into the dirt. There was a low rise to the east that had a commanding view over the beach. I now knew where the supplies came ashore. I didn't think the U-boat could come up to the shore, so they must have been transporting the crates by rowboat. Since I didn't find any near the beach, I assumed they were bringing them in by truck. I would have a commanding field of fire over both the truck and the beach, but maybe not over the U-boat. It would depend on how close the U-boat could get to the shore. They could definitely reach my men with the field gun on the sub, but they would probably avoid doing so because of the attention it would bring. That's why their rendezvous point was between the Port Jefferson Harbor Breakwater Lighthouse and the Horton Point Lighthouse. Having seen all I needed, I headed back towards the last farm where the workers had been dropped off. I found a spot near the road where I could hide and take a nap. Fortunately, the truck's engine, which had been hit by a train earlier, woke me up. The farmer was putting his tools away, so I managed to slip in with the workers and board the truck. I didn't smell any worse or better than the men who had been working all day in the fields. As the truck pulled out, one of the men lit a cigarette. At least I thought it was a cigarette, until I recognized the scent of something else being smoked. The man next to me offered me a puff, but I passed. I needed to stay sharp. I saw a few more cigarettes being lit, and someone mentioned that it would all be done before we reached the city. The reunion with Samantha was nice, even though she wrinkled her nose when we hugged. I promised her that I would take a bath and change before we ate. Then once I could not eat anymore, we would have a meeting. It is funny how a good bath and a filling meal can make a man feel Jake, no matter what else is in his future. That is how I felt when I sat down to chin with Mr. Blue and his mob. I opened the meeting by telling Mr. Blue what we would need first. We will need some explosives. They might be used to open a bunker or vault, and will definitely be needed to destroy facilities there. Mr. Blue assured me that he had nitro, dynamite, and TNT. He pointed to a small, grinning homeboy named Toby. I also told him that we would need some Tommy guns. I knew that Mr. Blue had access to at least 2 Tommy guns. I told Mr. Blue that he would get all the money, but all of the weapons would have to be destroyed. He agreed, far too readily for my suspicious mind. But when you make a deal with the devil, you had to expect such things. Mr. Blue's mob let him set the conditions. He was the boss. It was as simple as that. Mr. Blue had a wild idea about taking over the submarine, but I talked him out of it. I think he liked the idea of becoming a pirate and a terror to all New York shipping. One mention of the Navy getting after him sealed the coffin of that idea. He had no problem shooting plugs. They were all O-free anyway. It took me a while to convince him that it was not open season on whites. Some of his crew had some salty feelings for some farmers. But Mr. Blue was the boss, and he saw the wisdom with not starting a war with the O-free. That really made me feel better about the whole idea of invading the island with Tommy guns. The second hardest idea to get past Mr. Blue was that Samantha would go along and take low-light pictures to document everything. It and the German documents would be our get-out-of-jail-free card. He and his mob were worried that they would be identified by the photos. Samantha assured him that she would not take any pictures of the men's faces. Samantha is as cute as a bug's ear and can turn on the charm when she wants to. Mr. Blue did not have a chance and gave in to the idea of Samantha taking pictures. I then asked Mr. Blue to glom some black grease paint. It would be easier to get off Samantha's and my skin than shoe polish. All the homeboys laughed just then, and I wondered if I had cleaned all of the shoe box disguise off my mug. I went over the things I had found out X by X. The first spot was the easiest to plan. We just had to blow up the bunker, and it was a one-man job. One of Mr. Blue's men, Leroy, was assigned to blow it up. It was decided that both bunkers would be blown up at the same time. Then the armory and the inn would be next. I wasn't sure how many people would be at the inn for the fireworks display. I'm going to be at the armory, so the men handling the inn can't be too fast with their rods. They should only let loose with them if somebody pulls a rod. I expect that most will be innocent civilians. Anybody bumped off that did not need to be is going to buy a lot of grief from the coppers. Mr. Blue let his mob know that this was very important. Finally, we will move to the U-boat rendezvous. I have the spot picked out where they can watch the submarine and the plugs meeting it. They should not have to burn powder until we all get there, especially the chopper squad. The way I see it, everybody there is Jake to be chilled. That's all I have, Mr. Blue. Mr. Blue stood up to chin with his mob. Maddox has given us the low down on the stomp. He was cooking with gas. Y'all collar a nod and grab some ground rations. Saturday night we lay some iron. After the meeting, I joined Samantha for a nice relaxing cuddle and some time talking until we fell asleep in each other's arms. The smell of bacon frying filled the air and tugged me towards the day. The first thing I noticed was the emptiness of the bed. Then the reason for the bed not being so full really made its presence known to my mind, through my nose. The meal last night was very filling, but I was so hungry again, my stomach thought it was back in the reeds. I floated out of bed, not yet fully awake, but tempted by the heavenly aroma of breakfast cooking. I thought back to those days in the mission. The food there was filling and satisfied the hunger in the most basic of ways, but was nothing like what my nose now promised. I peeked around the corner and saw Samantha busy in the kitchen. I tiptoed down the hallway to the bathroom. I wanted to look good for her, to be worthy of such a feast. Looking at myself in the mirror, I could see where I had missed some of the brown shoe polish that had changed my identity, at least to the most casual observer. I scrubbed my face and hands until my skin was almost raw. It appeared as though I had been caught with my pants down in the women's department in Macy's. My face was that red. I performed all my other morning ablutions until I pronounced myself ready to face the day. Walking into the kitchen to give Samantha a hug from behind while she cooked, I was feeling on top of the world. That was until she turned around and burst out laughing at my appearance. It figures. I try to make myself presentable for my lady, and she has me all goofy with her laughter. There was a sparkle in her eyes that redeemed me, though. Have a seat, and let me get you some coffee. I dutifully went to the table. As I was sitting down, she continued, "You look like you could use it." Then she healed that barb with a mischievous laugh. This dame was really special and was growing on me. She set a plate in front of me, then brought her own and joined me at the table. "Thank you for this wonderful breakfast. You're amazing. Do you do windows, too?" Now it was her face that turned red, but in a charming way. We made small talk over breakfast, and then I helped her with the dishes. It almost felt unnatural how normal the morning seemed. Here we were, hiding out in an unfamiliar neighborhood, preparing for an important mission against dangerous forces, yet we were enjoying breakfast together as if it were just a regular morning. We spent the rest of the day lazily relaxing and sharing our past lives with each other, growing closer with every secret shared. I realized I had found my future wife and companion, someone I could stand by in this increasingly troubled world. Feeling as nervous as a boy on his first date, I dropped to one knee and said, "Samantha Goldman, would you become my wife?" You would have thought I had shouted at her, based on the amount of tears she shed. I took her in my arms and gazed into her eyes until she finally said, "Yes." When we told Mr. Blue the happy news, he was completely stunned. He just kept shaking his head and muttering, "Wacky Ofrey, done fell out," and went wacky. We surprised him even more when we told him we wanted to get married on Saturday morning. All throughout the day, we could hear him muttering, "Wacky Ofrey." The next morning, we were married in a small church just around the corner. The women took great care in making sure everything was perfect for Samantha. They spent the night before talking to her about married life, while I spent the evening with the men, learning their advice on how to navigate marriage. I'm not sure how they made the drink we shared, but I sure drank it like it was the best thing I had ever had. We had our honeymoon that afternoon. After we had consummated our love for each other, we got dressed. Our cover was that we were a jazz band going down to the island to jive at a private party. The homeboys were all decked out in their suits. The Tommy guns and heaters were going as a git box, reeds, tram, etc. We brought a Real licorice stick in case some copper wanted to see our tools. I was supposed to be the manager, as there were supposed to be some platter plugs there. I was wearing cheaters and a suit. Samantha was the canary. The dames had her sporting some hot glad rags. Mr. Blue was not going to join us. Leroy was going to be his hep cat buddy Guy for the lay. We all left in one boiler, a 1935 Chevrolet Suburban carryall that had been gloomed that afternoon. A copper in a squad car gave us the once-over, but did not put the screws on us. We were just some jig hep cats going to a jolly up. You could hear the sigh of relief as the copper turned off. Once we entered Long Island, we dropped off the 2 Gs with the Tommy guns to truck down to the beach. We then went back to the main road, took the turn off for Camp Siegfried, and pulled far off the road before the turn that led to the gate. We all piled out of the tin can and got changed. Samantha had been thinking ahead and wore her pants and shirt under her dress. That disappointed the homeboys, but made me feel better. Samantha and I took turns putting grease paint on each other's skin that showed. Samantha had her camera and extra film. I took a flashlight. I wanted to see what was in that second bunker before we blew it. Those of us that were packing had extra shells. The small, shy Toby had his box with his boom boom dinguses in it. I recognized a couple of small bottles of nitro, some sticks of dynamite already fused in a chunk of what I took to be TNT. We sneaked down the road, stopping at the main gate. I uncovered the hidden compartment and pulled the lever. Samantha took a picture of the compartment in the raised section of turf. I slid the hatch to the side and she took a picture of the inside of the bunker with the machine gun and all the spare belts of shells. I turned to Leroy, who was just taking a stick of dynamite from Toby. "Do not blow this until the fireworks start. After you blow it, I'll meet you at the armory." The rest of us, 2 Gs, Toby, Samantha, and myself, sneaked further into the camp. One of the Gs with a Tommy gun was clanking it against something. I made him stop. When we reached the bunker, I opened the hatch. I went in and turned on my flashlight. Samantha right behind me. The smell like gasoline was stifling in here. In one corner were 8 sets of 2 tanks with a pipe attached to them. Samantha softly whistled and took several pictures of them. "Do you know what these are?" I shook my head no. "They are flame spritzering. The Germans used individual flame throwers in the war to end all wars. It looks like they have been making it better. So much for no more wars." Samantha took pictures of the entire bunker, including the gun ports. We backed out of the bunker, and I showed the Gs how to close the door. "They will only need 1 stick of dynamite, Toby. Make sure you close the door after you toss in the dynamite, and get back a lot. It will blow up easy with lots of fire. Remember, wait for the fireworks." Toby, Samantha, and I sneaked back near the armory. No one was outside smoking this time. A few minutes went by. It was very dark out. I wondered where the fireworks were. The plan depended on them for timing and to provide some cover for the explosions and gunshots. I was pacing back and forth, worrying a path in the grass, when I heard a shrill whistle and saw a spark rising in the sky. The fireworks have started. I heard the fireworks explode and saw the pretty pattern it left in the sky. A few seconds after that, I heard an enormous explosion from the second bunker. There was no way that the people in the camp thought that was fireworks. I heard yelling from the inn and expected the door to the armory to open. The 2 Gs from the second bunker ran up. They were covered with soot and very excited. I shushed them up and told them to watch the stone wall that hid the door to the armory. The bunker at the gate should have been blown up by now. Was something wrong? I said to the 2 Tommy gunners, "Leroy's dynamite should have gone off by now. I'm going to see if he needs help. I'll be back soon. Keep watching the armory." I ran up to the gate, not noticing that Samantha had followed me. The bunker's door was wide open with no sign of Leroy. Samantha came to a stop next to me. She was also puzzled. Leroy stepped out of the shadows carrying the machine gun. Samantha gasped when she realized what was happening. The boss had gathered everyone together and thought out this change to the plan. Mr. Blue wants those fancy guns. A truck is waiting by the warehouse for my word. Then we can save all those fancy guns for Mr. Blue. I'll miss those people at the beach with their Tommy guns, but sometimes you have to lose a little to win big. The police will find the bodies of you and Miss Samantha and call off the manhunt. They'll probably clash with the other group at the beach and think those are all the weapons. That is, until Mr. Blue takes care of the other gangs and takes over. You two are getting too close with some of the others, and that's why we had to do it this way. I would let you give her a farewell, but time's running out. He pointed the machine gun at us and pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. He tried again, still nothing happened. Leroy dropped the worthless machine gun and grouped for his heater. I calmly took my .38 out of my pocket and snuffed him out, shooting him between the eyes. I then took my .45 out and fired 3 shots into the air. Taking the stick of dynamite out of Leroy's pocket, I lit the fuse and tossed it and the machine gun into the bunker. I closed the hatch to the bunker and led Samantha away to a safe distance. Did you know that Mr. Blue was going to double-cross us, and that way you broke the gun? I thought we were dead. I figured that he would want to keep the German gun somehow, but I did not know that Leroy was going to shoot us with the machine gun. I just took the firing pin out when I first found it. I did not know if we would have a chance to stop the Nazis, and I figured that them having one less machine gun couldn't hurt. Now just follow my lead. We ran back to where Toby and the 2 homeboys were waiting. All this time the fireworks continued to go off. One of the Nazis had the drop on Leroy and shot him just as I was getting there. I drilled the Nazi and then blew the bunker. One of the guys asked, I was wondering what happened to Leroy. So what do we do now? Now you're in charge, and we follow the plan. He stood tall and nodded. Now I'm in charge. I said, cover me, and headed toward the hidden door at the back of the grandstand. I flipped the switch, but the door only started to open slightly. It must have been locked from the inside. I waved Toby over and asked if he could break it open. He grinned, then slowly unscrewed the cap of one of the bottles of nitroglycerin and carefully dripped it along the doorframe. We walked back until he said, this should be far enough. We dunked under cover, and he threw the glass bottle that had the nitro in it at the door. It hit on the edge, exploding and setting off the nitro around the door. There was a bunch of smoke, and the door fell off. I said, get ready. Just before the first brown shirt carrying a submachine gun and bleeding from both ears tried to duck out of the armory and get away. The Tommy guns sang their song of death, and he fell twitching to the grass. He was soon followed by a fellow brown shirt guard with the same dramatic results. We waited by, no one else came out. I asked Toby for his last 2 sticks of dynamite and warned everybody to get back. I lit the dynamite, threw them down the stair, and ran for cover. We heard a muffled, got him Himmel, Neen. Then there was a whump as the armory exploded. After the big explosion, there were smaller explosions and cracking as the shells went off. Samantha snapped a couple of pictures while the armory was still exploding. I waved the men forward, and we walked to the inn. The area outside the inn was filled with small groups of men, most speaking in German. They were silent as we walked past them into the inn. A radio was playing in the inn. Today the Danzig Volkstag dissolved the German Nationalist Party. Former members of the German Nationalist Party joined the National Socialists. I remember thinking the line between us and them was becoming increasingly clear. If you were German, you were either fully aligned with the regime or not. There were a few women in the main room speaking in hushed tones. I tipped my hat to them, saying, ladies, as I passed their table. The door to the basement was open. I heard footsteps quickly ascending the stairs. The manager was rushing up with a satchel. His eyes widened when he saw the individuals with Tommy guns. I took the satchel from him and checked inside. It was full of money, but the important documents were missing. I handed the satchel to the person in charge and asked the manager where the German papers were. He pointed back down the staircase. I let him go past me and turned to the others, saying, I'll be right back. Try not to cause any trouble. Samantha followed me downstairs. I showed her how the wine rack worked, and she took a picture. We moved through the trapdoor, and I shone my flashlight ahead of us. The documents were still there. Samantha took another picture, and we gathered the documents before heading back upstairs. Then I escorted the armed individuals outside. Once there I was accosted by a middle-aged man. What's going on here? I am an important man in this town. I have a right to know what is happening. I pushed past him and told him that we were just taking out the trash. A car was driving down the gravel road towards the inn. The men I was with noticed it was a squad car and bristled. I noticed it was a local police car and held my arm out for them to wait. The car pulled up, and I saw that Deputy Sawyer was driving, and he was not wearing his uniform. He stopped the squad car and said, look at me here without my gun. Why? Anybody with a gun could tell me to drive them to the beach, and I would have to. Is not life strange like that sometimes? I grinned at Deputy Sawyer and motioned for the 3 homeboys to get in. They looked at me like I was goofy, but got in. I held open the passenger door while Samantha scooted in beside Sawyer. I got in, closed the door, and in my best Park Avenue voice told Sawyer to head for the beach. Sawyer dropped us on at the beginning of the beach road. He told me, "Stay down and give those Nazis Watfer." I saluted him, and he drove away. He could not officially help, but his help was most welcome and timely too. I led everyone up to the observation post on the bluff. One of the homeboys watching reported to me, "They are almost done. That 3 miles in on the boat. There are some German bell-bottoms. But they watchin' the sea." I wanted to wait for Miles to come back in the boat that had just left the beach. The fates changed my plan by having one of the brown shirts catch a glimpse of us on the bluff above the beach. He started yelling and tried to drill us with his rod. Here is something to remember. Never bring a heater to a chopper fight. I told the homeboys, "Go ahead, start throwing some metal at him." All the brown shirts on land were chilled off, and the truck was on fire. The boat was sinking too, the plugs and boat having way too many holes in them. "Fire at the U-boat," I yelled. The metal rain from the Tommy guns made quick corpses out of the German bell-bottoms, but the lead lugs just bounced off the iron-skinned U-boat. I mumbled, "I wish there was something we could do to that U-boat." I felt a tug on my sleeve, and then a smiling Toby handed me the block of TNT with a bottle of nitro wired to it. I took the package carefully, and I made my way down to the beach. As I waded into the ocean, I heard an ahuga horn sounding off in the submarine. The water was still cold. It was only May. I took the wire in my teeth and swam overhand towards the sub. I prayed that the nitro would not go off. If it did, I would need more than a dentist to put me back together. I reached the U-boat as it was sinking beneath the waves. I wired the explosives to the railing and swam away as fast as I could. The U-boat continued to move away and was soon under the water except for the periscope. There was no great explosion. Apparently the nitro hadn't went off. I knew that the TNT would not go off by itself. I swam back to the beach, thinking that, well, it was worth a try. The homeboys were starting to get nervous, so I said, "Go ahead and take the tin can. Samantha and I will be all right. We have pictures now, so the FBI can't say there was nothing here. I was really glad to have you men along. We could not have stopped the fascists if not for you." They gave me shy smiles and walked away down the road. Samantha and I just sat on the sand, watching the periscope get further and further away. "I just wish we had gotten Miles. We owed him." Samantha nodded, then laid her head on my shoulder. The periscope started to go under the water. Soon we could not see it. I said, "Look, she is going to make it home." Suddenly a spout of water flew into the air near where we had last seen the U-boat. Or maybe not. I led a smiling Samantha up the farm road, complimenting her on her choice of cosmetics. We walked towards Yafank talking about the close calls we had, the good times and the hard times. Mostly we talked about our future. Samantha decided to resign from the FBI, that is after we were cleared of all charges. She was going to be my new partner. I wondered if Mr. Blue would hold the loss of his weapons against me. There was the choice of moving, maybe to San Francisco. I had grown up in the Big Apple, and this is all I knew. I would really miss this city, but if Samantha needed me to move, I would. We were still talking when we saw flashing blue lights, and a squad car pulled up. Inside was Deputy Sawyer. There have been reports of explosions, gunfire, and a robbery nearby. Do you know anything about anything that happened there? Samantha and I laughed until we cried. Finally, we were able to stop laughing, stare him in the eyes, and shake our heads. After that, we started laughing again. He just shook his head and tucked us in the back of the squad car. He looked at us in the rear-view mirror. "The FBI is now closed. I'll drop you off in the morning, but you'll have to spend the night in our jail." He then addressed Samantha. "Don't worry, I'll make sure that he gets the lumpy cot." It was 1991 when a Naval Reserve aircraft off the Atlantic coast had a massive reading on the magnetic anomaly detector. The aircraft was just running some operational tests on the equipment. At first, this anomaly was attributed to equipment malfunction. When it was found that this was an actual discovery, the data was sent to NUMA, the National Underwater Marine Agency. A dive on the wreck by NUMA revealed the wreckage of a German World War II U-boat. Further investigation revealed that there was a compartment on the submarine that had not been exposed to the ocean water. NUMA scientists managed to create an air-filled void around the compartment, which allowed them to open the hatch. What they discovered astounded them. Inside the compartment, which turned out to be the captain's cabin, were two mummified bodies, one of a man and one of a woman. They were dressed in 1930s-era clothing. The man's arms were around the woman's neck, as if choking her. The woman's nails had skin from the man's cheeks. The woman was never identified, but the man carried documents for a Raymond Miles, a German national and assistant to the German Consul General. There were a large number of documents recovered from the captain's cabin, but they were labeled as classified. Thus ends the lives of Raymond Miles and Lena Stratton. They were made for each other and spent eternity locked in a desperate struggle. Dear listeners, Please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.